Welcome to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast, where the goal is to improve organizations and serve students one leader at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Jochum. If you're a department chair in higher education or any type of educational leader, and you want to improve yourself to better serve and influence those you lead, you've come to the right place. Because the best way to improve an organization is to improve its leader. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. As always, so appreciative that you're taking time out of your busy schedule to not only improve yourself as a leader, but most importantly, those you serve. As always, I am so excited today. We have a wonderful guest, great K-12 leader with a lot to share. You're not going to want to miss this. Friends, hey, today we have Dr. Bhavna Sharma-Lewis. She currently serves as the Superintendent of Schools in Diamond Lake District 76, which is located in Mundelein, Illinois, about 40 miles north of Chicago. A brief bio is Dr. Sharma-Lewis is starting her 15th year as a leader of this highly diverse multicultural suburban school district. She's an experienced educator with 30 years of service in public education, having worked as an elementary and middle school teacher, assistant principal, assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, and now superintendent. She received her doctorate in education from the University of Illinois at Chicago and serves as an adjunct professor at Concordia University. She earned her National Superintendent Certification from the American Association of School Administrators and was selected by her peers to represent and advocate for the Northern Illinois region as a governing board member for AASA. She currently serves on various local and state level boards to foster collegiality, collaboration, and professional development among her colleagues and peers. And she also serves as a coach and mentor for educational leaders on a state and national level, and developed and facilitates the InPower Professional Network to coach women in leadership. Dr. Sharma-Lewis prioritizes investing in talent, building teams, and supporting cultures to optimize organizational success. So, Dr. Bhavna Sharma-Lewis, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Chris. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Well, hey, I'm doing very well. As we record this, we're still in the midst of getting school kicked off for K-12 and higher ed. So one of my favorite times a year. And I just wanted to let our listeners know, and I'll put her information in the show notes. If you have not followed Dr. Sharma-Lewis or familiar with the great things she's doing, you need to. She and I connected at the Human X Ventures Impact and Legacy Summit end of June up in Omaha, where she was one of the featured speakers and did a wonderful job. And I just want to start there. Bhavna, if you could just briefly tell us a little bit about your leadership journey. And you're obviously in a larger suburban district right now, superintendent, but just a little bit about your leadership journey and how you got to where you are today.
Well, thank you. And it has been a journey. It's been a 33-year journey. And wow, it's gone by so fast. And if you would have told me, as a first-year teacher 33 years ago, that I was going to blink and be on the cusp of retirement, which I will be retiring at the end of this school year, I would have said, what are you talking about? But it has just been a good, bad, ugly, and sparkling journey along the way. I started out as a classroom teacher, taught for 5 years, and I became a building level administrator for 11 years, 1 year as an assistant principal, and then 10 years as principal, and then went into the central office leadership role for curriculum and instruction. And then this is my third superintendency in the Chicagoland suburbs. I'm in the middle of my 10th year as superintendent of Diamond Lake. And as you said, it's about a suburb about 40 miles north of Chicago, highly diverse. We have about 70% of our population where English is their second language. And we have about 65% of our population that is low income. About 10% of our population is special ed, but we just celebrate that diversity and love the richness that it brings. And it's a high dual language population. So our students, when they graduate in 8th grade, if they choose to go down that dual language route, graduate with a bicultural, biliteracy, entering into that program into our high school. So that's just an amazing accomplishment that I'm really proud to share. Personally, I've been married for 27 years. I have two sons. One just graduated from the University of Alabama and is a second lieutenant in the Army serving in the transportation division. And the other one is a senior at the University of Alabama. So I have a really fun and fulfilling personal and professional life. And I'm just so honored that you asked me to join you this morning.
Well, hey, thank you. First of all, congrats on the upcoming retirement. Obviously, a great career and well deserved. Also, great to hear about your boys. Obviously, the one, thank him for his service. And even though I grew up a native Nebraska fan, I should probably say Roll Tide because you have two Alabama students, which is
Yes.
great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh,
Yes, I will always say roll tide, and I always honor those who have the courage to say that too, especially coming from Nebraska.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm a huge college football fan, so I appreciate great programs. Hey, so when you presented up in Omaha, you presented on diversity and leadership, leveraging key talents, and everything in that. It was a great presentation. One thing that really stood out to me, though, and listeners on here will know this, is you use the phrase acronym Sparkle On. I think in your intro you even said that. I love that. You said everything from good, bad, ugly, and sparkling. And and what really stood out to me, because I really believe in the power of culture, climate, values, and in my opinion, it's something that you do daily. And let's just jump right in because I've gone to your district website, and this just isn't an acronym. This is who you are as a district, and I can tell that it is a daily practice. So why don't you just tell our listeners who might not be familiar with this, what is Sparkle On, and how does that affect your culture, climate, and core values?
Well, that's a great question. And you know what? Sparkle On is our culture and our climate and our core values. It's our mindset. And what it means, each letter stands for something. So it's S, service; P, passion; A, advocacy; R, respect; K, kindness; L, love; E, equity; O, opportunity; and N, nurture. And that Sparkle On. And how it came about, I'll take you back to the beginning. So as I shared, this is my 10th year in Diamond Lake. When I started back in 2015, they were going through kind of a little transition period where the board, the administrative team, and the staff, there was some trust issues. There was some dissension among staff, and there was a culture and climate shift in the sense, or rift, I should say, where they didn't trust the board, they didn't trust the superintendent, and it was just trickling through the organization. It was very unhealthy. So the superintendent left, and the board was really looking for a change agent in the sense of culture and climate. We really need to change our image, our beliefs, our core values, because, and they were looking for a brand to identify with because it was just unhealthy and people weren't feeling good about themselves. And it was just, kind of a dismal situation. And I always tell the story that when I walked in, I put together a transition team. And at first, one of the questions the board asked me, and they told me, and they kind of shared the story of how it wasn't in a good place and what would I do and what was my leadership style. And I said, treat people the way I want to be treated. And they looked at me like I was going to add something else to that. And I said, no, that is truly what it is, right? People want to come to work and they want to feel good. They spend more time at work than they do with their own families at home. So they want to feel valued. They want to feel appreciated. They want to feel like they belong. They want to feel safe, emotionally as well as physically, and they want to feel loved, right? You are spending 6, 8, 10 hours a day, depending on your position, in that building and with your colleagues, and you just want to feel like it's a home away from home. They were like, yes, that's exactly what we're looking for. How do you intend to do that? I said, well, I'm really going to listen to people and see what is good, right? What do people want to celebrate and do more of? And so I put together a transition team of staff and administrators. And I just said, tell me what you want to continue doing here. Tell me what you want to stop doing, and tell me what we want to start doing going forward. How do we celebrate and elevate this district? Because there was a lot of great things. And everybody universally, whether I talk to kids or families or staff members, was people that come to Diamond Lake, because it's a small little district of about 1,000 kids that feed into 2 different high schools, was when people come here, they want to come and they want to work with our families. Our families are working class people, some 2 to 3 jobs, immigrated to this country for better opportunity. They definitely want the best for themselves, their students, and their families, and their extended families. So that was clear from the beginning that when, we're not the highest paying district, so the staff that come to work here really value and appreciate the culture of our families and want to serve that community. And the parents and families that move there want these dedicated teachers, because that's something that they take pride and value in, is education, because that's what's going to elevate their children in the second and third generation and so on. So we just took our district is located right off of a lake, Diamond Lake, and we said, all right, well, diamonds sparkle. And so how do we kind of just turn that around? And it's just evolved in 10 years of, taking that sparkle, making it our own. What are we here for? We are here, and one of our mottos is embrace, empower, excel, each child, each day. And every single day, kids and staff come to school to sparkle, right? Service, passion, advocacy, respect, kindness, love, equity, opportunity, nurture. That is what we're there for. And that's not just from the adults, it's from the kids, it's from the communities. So I love when little girls and little boys come to school and they know what that means. They wear their fancy clothes. No matter what they're doing, they're sparkling. Our teachers, again, and they're brand ambassadors. So they are, not only wearing the sparkle, but they're living the sparkle, and they're out there in the communities believing in that sparkle. When I started in the district, they would call it, our middle school is West Oak Middle School, and they would call it West Broke. That was the surrounding communities, the kids that came from other conference areas to play our teams in sports would call it West Broke. And just in the past 10 years, we've passed a referendum, we've updated all of our facilities. So staff, students, and community really take pride in the facilities that they work in. There's a sense of ownership and pride. And now it's the best gym, it's the best locker room. Kids are proud to share that they go to West Oak, and our conference, which are much wealthier suburbs around us, come in and they're like, wow, look at this place. And I think, that's what we mean by sparkle. It's not just, the paint on the walls and the redone floor and the new lighting and the new bleachers and the new logos that are all over. It's just how they feel when they come in. And because our kids and our staff and our community have that sense of pride, and our school is the center of that community. So that's what Sparkle On is, and that's what we believe in, and that's truly who we are and what we live every day.
I love hearing that, Bhavna, because what you touched on was truly turnaround leadership, turned around a culture. It just shows that by and large, I always say the best way to improve an organization is to improve the leader. And I'm sure that by and large, the people that were there before you came are the same type of people that are there now. It's just they needed a direction, they needed some vision, which you clearly gave them, and needed something to feel a sense of pride in. You mentioned that there was a lack of trust, and one of the things, there's a book by Ken Blanchard and Randy Conley, and what they say is the opposite of trust is actually control, at least in an organization. And so I'm curious, when you came in, what were some of the things, and maybe this would be advice to leaders, that you maybe on a daily ground level, some of the things that you had to do to earn back that trust and start building that positive culture that you have now?
Well, and I love what you just said about, to change a culture, you have to change the leader. And I think you're absolutely right. And it's not only changing the leader, but it's changing the leadership and how you make people feel. And I think, you do what you say and you say what you do. It's really simple, but it's not easy. And I think that's what happens is people, they know the right things to do, but sometimes being consistent is hard, so it's being visible. It's doing what you say and say what you do. So it's not, okay. And I really literally walked in with that transition team and I said, okay, we are not going to do, because they were on like an initiative fatigue. Every year it was something new, some new program, something shiny to put on there. And then people wouldn't get the support or the professional development. And then it was fizzle away. And then the next year it was the next, new craze. And so I had said to them, okay, we're going to do no initiatives. All we're going to do is make people feel good for the next year. That includes staff, that includes kids, that includes families. So when they come into our building, they're going to just feel that belonging, safety, and love. And it was myself and the principals and the central office leaders that literally just walked around, asked people how they were doing, were visible in the classrooms, connected with kids, connected with staffs, build those relationships. And, every 100 days doing a check-in. How are people feeling? Right? I think we're all guilty of it in schools and in school organizations where we start out the year in August. This is our initiative. This is what we're going to do. And then we don't check in until May and say, okay, how did we do? And you would never go to the doctor and say, okay, I have a pain. He or she may give you some medicine or some treatment or some therapy. And then they'd say, all right, come back and see me in 3 months. Let me see how you're doing. And that's really what we did. We did these 100-day check-ins, and we've done that now for the past 10 years. I did it with each building. I did it with the district leadership team, and I did it with the board. And I said, how are we doing? Right? Like, let's get a temperature check. Let's see how people are, quote unquote, feeling. Are people feeling good? Is that trust being rebuilt? Are those relationships getting stronger? And then from there, people after a year, then they were like, this is great. We're feeling amazing. And then, then they're going to follow. So the following year, we were like, okay, let's put together a new strategic plan. Where do we want to be in 5 years? Right? Let's do some goals and priorities. How are we going to measure to see if we're successful? Let's look at the assessments. And then people will be, quote unquote, begin to follow because they trust in the direction you're going. For the whole year, you told us you weren't going to do any initiatives. You told us you were going to build relationships and get to know us and get to know our culture. You did that. I now trust you, and I'm going to now entrust you with the direction that you're going.
I love what you said. So many great points there, Bhavna, and especially about feeling. I think we have to focus on how do people feel? What does it feel like to live and to work in this culture? And you hit the nail on the head with initiative fatigue. Not that we don't need initiatives and that we don't need to raise certain metrics. You know that better than anyone. I'm sure your state, like most, pays attention to reading scores and math scores. But at the end of the day, I agree that if we need people to feel a certain way when they come into our culture, because of that, and you and a lot of our listeners are familiar with John Gordon and kind of popularize, getting the right people on the bus, getting the right people off. I refer to that as culture keepers and killers when you take over a new organization. Did you have some tough conversations when you first started? Because even though it wasn't the best of cultures, there are some people that, for whatever reason, that might be their preferred way of living. And did you have to do some of that, getting the right people on the bus, moving where they sit, or getting them off the bus to get things in the right direction?
Great question. I have had a courageous conversation. I call it love tough, right? I love you, but I expect a lot from you. And, I had brought a couple people with me from my previous district, and they weren't able to adjust to the culture, right? So we've had some difficult and courageous conversations throughout the years. And I would say that there's always 10% that are transitioning out because you're always on a cycle of continuous improvement. You can't get comfortable where you're at. And I think sometimes leaders at every level get very comfortable. And it's like, well, that worked this year. Yeah, that worked this year, but it's not going to work next year. And it worked last year, but it may not work this year. And I think that's what, as the superintendent, you always have to be alert and aware of and cognizant of that. Yeah, it can get really comfortable and you don't have to do that. But in order to be on a cycle of continuous improvement and growth on your way to excellence, you have to make sure everybody around you is on that same path. And if they're not, then you have to have those difficult and courageous conversations of, you know what, I love you as a person. These are the expectations for the district and our culture. And either you're leveling up with us or you're leveling out. And a lot of people are afraid to have those conversations. And trust me, I've lost some relationships over that. But my personal mission is to that district and to those kids. And that's who we're serving, not ourselves.
I always say in our profession as educators, one of my mentors taught me as a classroom teacher that, good teacher's a good thief. I think I'm going to use their phrase, we're either leveling up or leveling out. That is wonderful. And I really like that is we can love someone as a person, and teachers know this better than anyone. You can love that kiddo in the front row. Doesn't mean they might not drive you crazy or be making bad choices that, eventually they give up the right to be in your class. They might give up the right to be in your organization because of a failure to, like you said, to level up or level out.
Yes.
Um, I know our time is limited today, and there's so much that you touched on, and this is wonderful, wonderful for leaders wondering about what can I do to help my culture? What can I do to have tough conversations? There were some other things that you also listed, and I know things that you are passionate about. In addition to your leadership and team developing and embodying Sparkle On, are there any other things or one other thing that you, for the sake of our listeners in the show, would also like to touch on and share?
You know, I guess I would like to leave your listeners with, if you could do one thing, is really figure out what your purpose and your why is as leaders and make sure you stay true to that. And I think I always say, I have my ABCs. Always be authentic. That's my A. Unapologetically you. For so long, there has been times where I said things or did things to make other people happy, whether it was my colleagues, whether it was my board, whether it was family members or friends. But I think what I've learned is if I'm going to be true to myself and truly live Sparkle On in the core values, I have to be authentically me. This is who I am. This is what I believe in. And I'm going to continue to lead that way. And you may or may not like that. And if you don't, like I said, either you're leveling up or you're going to level out, but this is the direction that we're going. So being authentic and authentically you, and figure out who that is and own it. And then I think B, your brand. What is that? You are your brand ambassador all the time. And your brand may not be Sparkle On, it may be something else, and that has evolved over time. But you're the brand ambassador. And you said this earlier, Chris, you are infecting a culture or affecting a culture. And you know it when you walk into a room and people just either suck the energy out of you, out of that room, or they come in and elevate that energy. And I think that's what Sparkle On is I want to always be that brand ambassador. And I say this to my kids when they were growing up, they were heavy baseball and basketball, and eventually golf. But I always said, when you put that jersey on, you're playing for the team on the front, but you represent the name on the back, which was our last name. So either you are always a brand ambassador as a family member or as a district member, or as a church member, whatever your organization is, you represent that brand. So you're walking around with Sparkle On. And if you're not, and I had a difficult conversation with a teacher yesterday, if you're not sparkling on, then you have to figure that out, because being here in our district, that's a priority. It's not optional to sparkle. So just being true to your brand and always living that brand and being that brand ambassador and leading with that in mind. And then C, you are the culture. You create that caring, connected culture. And so whether you're having a bad day, that's going to infect the culture. If you're having a positive day, you're leading by example, you're infecting people with positivity and good energy. You're the culture. Whether you're a district leader as superintendent, whether you're a school leader as a principal, or whether you're a classroom leader as a teacher, or whether you're a parent, or like I said, whatever organization you're involved with, you are the culture of that organization. So know your brand, what that is, that's the culture. being authentic to who you are. So those are my ABCs. That's what I would end with. And I opened my Institute Day this year because it's going to be my first day of school. I said, practice your ABCs, but your legacy starts today. You are living your legacy today, and you have to live the story you want to tell. A lot of times people say, oh, your legacy's, what was their legacy after they've left? No, I want to change that mindset of, you guys, when you walk into those classrooms, when you walk into those buildings, people are watching you all the time. They're going to say, yep, he or she lived the story they wanted to tell. Not after they were gone. They were kind and I want them to say that now. So I think those are just important things that people want to just start paying attention and being more cognizant of. And I wish I knew this, 30 years ago, so I could have been better in strengthening that brand. But it's never too late to learn. It's never too late to start writing your story. And it's never too late to sparkle on.
Well, what a great way to end this out. I know the listeners, hey, you're going to want to rewind this, take notes, listen again. There was a few what I call, pull the car over, stop the treadmill moments that were very, very impactful. But yes, we will leave it with that. Follow your ABCs of leadership. Know who you are, leave a living legacy every day, and sparkle on in your own world and environment to positively affect those you serve. So again, Dr. Bhavna Sharma-Lewis, thank you so much for giving up some valuable time today to speak into and add value to our listeners. And again, to the listeners, I thank you for giving up your time and developing yourself to help your organizations. So we appreciate your time, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. If you want to learn more about my leadership philosophy and how to be an effective chair, please consider my book, The Department Chair, A Practical Guide to Effective Leadership. You can find this and learn more about me by going to cjleadership.com. Also, please be sure to like this podcast, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. Thanks again for improving your organization and those you serve by improving yourself. Take care.